Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present you with my first ever mid-match Octagon commentary. This video features an absolutely epic showdown between Sam Mann, playing as Old One-Eye, and George Tinkham, piloting Eldorath Starbane. Both are exceptionally talented players, and were courteous enough to allow me my first ever opportunity to not only spectate an Octagon match, but also to record it, try my hand at providing live commentary, and subsequently to publish it to this channel. So, while you're watching this video, comments and constructive criticism regarding my commentary style are quite welcome, and though mistakes are definitely made, my quality stands only to improve with time. Please keep in mind that because of the enormous amounts of time I invest in producing my videos, I don't play nearly as much Conquest as I should. So as a result, I ask you please forgive an occasional display of inexperience, ignorance, or naivete. But nevertheless, if you do enjoy this video, I ask you hit that like button, ensure you're subscribed, and you're encouraged to share, because the more engagement this video receives, the more viewers I reach, and together, the broader we may grow our Conquest community. But, with our introduction aside, let's move right on in to my first commentated match today between Old One-Eye and Eldorath Starbane. Alright, so we're ready to go ahead and start here. We've got our 5 planets on the board. This game is going to be Sam Mann versus George Tinkham. Sam is going to be playing the role of Old One-Eye, and George is going to be taking up the Eldar. So Old One-Eye we've got as our regenerating Carnifex, and of course George is going to be the exhausting Eldorath Starbane. We've got our first 5 planets on the board. Iridial is going to be planet number 1 with healing. Atrox is 2. Taurus is 3, which is going to be interesting because the Synapse unit counts as another unit on the battlefield. Starts Sam off at a disadvantage. Planet 4 is Eloith, which is search top 3 cards of your deck for a card. And the 5th and final is Karnath, which allows us to trigger any battle ability in play. Our Tyranid player is starting off with 6 cards, 6 resources, whereas the Eldar is starting with 7. And our game should be starting in just one moment. We can see that the Tyranids have their dual command dial functionality here. Alright, so things are off to a start. This is actually my first time ever spectating a game. Looks like Toxic Venomthrope at Planet 3 for Sam. So, if he manages to win command, this is going to be infesting the planet. He's already down to 4 resources. This is a split card and resource planet. And of course, he probably wants to defend this to ensure that the opponent can't actually benefit from that card or resource bonus. So he's at quite the unit advantage now, which isn't necessarily a good thing, depending on where Eldorath goes. Looks like we've got a Void Pirate coming into play from George. But where is he going to send it? Looks like he's going to mirror Planet 3. So he's actually still at a command disadvantage. Sam is going to be putting a Scything Hormigaunt onto the first planet, which infests it immediately, which is going to confer significant battle advantages. He might be able to play something like a Hunter Gargoyle to have that swoop in and attack if need be. Alright, so we see a promotion opposite the Void Pirate, which allows it to hit 3 command icons, so it just passes the Venomthrope. It's potentially going to deny Sam command. It's potentially denying him those cards and resources. We see a regeneration on that Scything Hormagaunts, bringing it up to 4 hit points. It's still 2 attack, and it allows it to peel damage off of it. So it's looking likely that he's probably going to win the first planet, and even though it's going to return to play exhausted alongside his Warlord at subsequent battles, peeling off damage is going to be fantastic, so it's not just going to die right away exhausted. Looks like our Tyranid player's down to 1 resource, and George is now down to 2. He plays the new Autarch Salakia at the first planet, which you can invest additional resources in to get all sorts of abilities. Sam, like I mentioned before, did end up playing a Hunter Gargoyles at the final planet. Whether or not that ultimately backs up his, say, Synapse unit or his Warlord kind of remains to be seen, but keeping in mind Karnath, that fifth planet, is going to be able to trigger any battle ability whatsoever. I'll be very curious to see where these players send units. It would probably make sense for Sam to try and kill off the Autarch here. It's looking like George has just passed, Sam has just passed. So looking at all these different options, the Savage Warrior Prime is going to trigger a battle and gain initiative, basically as a Warlord would if there's no Warlord otherwise present. Sam is definitely going to be wanting to send one of his units to the first planet, hopefully to kill this Autarch. I'll be curious to see how many shields our Eldar player has. 4 cards in hand for him, 2 for the Tyranid player. It's looking like it's anybody's guess as to who might win command, first planet or third. It's still looking like George is going to ultimately win, so we might see Sam's Warlord sent to the third planet. He definitely wants to try and prevent the opponent from winning that battle there, so I wouldn't be surprised by maybe Synapse unit first planet and Old One-Eye third planet. Taking a look at George, I think he might want to tap out that Scything Hormigaunt. Looks like we've got our Warlord to the third planet, as I was thinking, and Eldorath to the first. So it's looking like Eldorath is going to get initiative during the battle. He's going to probably tap out the Scything Hormigaunts, but the Savage Warrior Prime is going to be able to attack for 2, the same as that Scything Hormigaunt. And unless George is willing to invest a lot of resources into, say, Area Effect or Armor Bane, things may not end too terribly well. Looks like we're figuring out command struggles here. I guess Eldorath actually tapped out the Savage Warrior Prime. For winning command struggles, it's going to be George taking our first planet here. I had to take a moment to remind our players to please use arrows to indicate attack targets. Planet 2, nobody is going to win. Planet 3, of course, our Tyranid player is going to win those resources. And then 4 or 5, we're seeing absolutely nothing whatsoever. So combat at the first planet is going to be pretty interesting because it is infested. Those Hunter Gargoyles are going to be able to swoop in opportunistically. I'll be quite curious to see if the Autarch Salakia ends up gaining probably Armor Bane would make the most sense to try and kill off some of these units, although the Scything Hormigaunts at 4 HP is going to be able to heal, and the Savage Warrior Prime at 5 HP, that's pretty high. It's looking like Sam is at 3 cards, our Eldar player is at 5. I'd be curious to see how many of those are events. There's not too many resources available. Our Tyranid player might be able to... Well, he actually cannot afford a Dark Cunning with just 1 resource. Seeing as how that costs 2 up front, and you don't actually get that cost reduction until after it's played, he's kind of out of luck there. It might make a lot of sense for Eldorath to run from this planet, but we'll have to see how things go with the Autarch. Looks like he is going to opt to attack the Scything Hormigaunts. There's been no resource spent. Sam takes all of that damage with no shield discard whatsoever, but he's also got that regeneration to pull off up to 2 points of damage. So hopefully he's got at least a shield at some point. But the Autarch is now tapped out. Regeneration is going to be activated, bringing him back down to a total of 3 hit points. Looks like the Scything Hormigaunt is going to attack, directed toward Autarch Salakia. So our Eldorath player's got 5 cards presently in hand. Looks like he ends up taking both points of damage, so he's at a mere single hit point. Definitely not looking good. Eldorath has yet to attack. We'll have to see if he ends up attacking or whether he ends up retreating. And he does decide to go for the offensive. It's not looking good for Autarch Salakia, unless our Eldar player happens to have a lot of shields in hand. Right, so as expected, the Hunter Gargoyles is going to be swooping in to an infested planet here, and it's now going to be able to pick off our 4-cost army units, unless our player has a hell of a lot of shields in hand. And let's see, we do see a discarded Empower, so that 3-cost event that bolsters... Oh! Ouch! So looks like Old One-Eye is going to be exhausting in order to trigger a No Mercy. So Empower is wasted, Autarch Salakia is destroyed. Unfortunately, it looks like the Void Pirate is probably going to get an opportunity to retreat, but at the same time, that seems like a pretty nasty early game surprise. Things are not looking great for the Eldar player losing that. And if he does not retreat Eldorath, things are going to be looking really grim indeed. Of course, we see a Gift of Isha, to my surprise, which is going to bring the Autarch back into play unexhausted, and it's probably now going to finish off that Scything Hormigaunt. Looks like George is lamenting his poor starting hand. Alright, so the Autarch is indeed going to be attacking the Scything Hormigaunts. I'm curious to see what is in Sam's hand. The Scything Hormigaunts are destroyed, and that regeneration is gone. This is going to bring us to the end of the first combat round. All units ready, and let's see if we end up seeing a retreat. It looks like Sam did retreat, presuming that's his HQ in the bottom right-hand corner here. So he's going to give up the first planet after all, which is going to allow our Eldar player to remove all damage from a target unit, although there are no damaged units in play. Eldorath, of course, moves back to HQ. Looks like Autarch Salakia ends up discarded at the end of that battle. And that's 2 shield cards we've seen gone, one nearly invaluable copy of Gift of Isha, but I'll be curious if that ends up making all the difference. We've got one of each color icon for our Eldar player. Looks like at Planet 3, both of our 0 attack units have attacked. The Void Pirate ultimately does exhaust, and it's looking like Sam is going to end up triggering that ability. If he could, he does not actually have fewer units than the opponent. So 4-2, it's going to be probably important that Sam keeps trying to win command at that planet. He does have that infestation token, so that's going to be very nice in that he can shift in his gargoyles there kind of opportunistically, but that's only going to be during combat, so it's going to be deposited at a planet during the command phase exhausted, so it's not going to be able to be quite as sneaky as it was the first time now. And it looks like we've finished our headquarters phase. Our first planet is now Aatrox Prime, and we've got a new 5th planet, which is Barless. It's going to be the card discard planet. Looks like we're going to be moving into our new deploy phase, and initiative is in the hands of the Eldar player. Alright, so it looks like our Eldar player, George, is playing another copy of Autarch Salakia. He's down to 0 resources, so he's not going to be doing much. That's at the 3rd planet. Opposite our Toxic Venomthrope, Sam plays Digestion Pool into his HQ, so any unit he ends up deploying at that infested 2nd planet is now going to be potentially cost reduced. He's got 4 resources, which is very strong indeed. dealing damage to units at HQ could potentially really hurt Sam, just because he's a Tyranid player, but seeing as how he's not a Swarmlord player, it's not potentially that big of a deal. Volatile Pyrovore at the first planet is going to make that fantastic in providing a bit of immunity in regard to, say, a Warlord trying to come in and kill it, just because not only is it attacking for 3, but it also deals a ton of damage when it is destroyed by an attack. And since Iridial is gone, Eldorath is potentially fairly vulnerable. The Pyrovore is a great target to get tapped out and exhausted, as is this Tyranid Warrior, which itself has 2 commands. So, ton of command icons here at Taurus, very heavily defended by our Tyranid player, especially considering he can shift in those gargoyles at any time. Looks like Sam ends up passing, and at this point we've got to pick where Warlords are going to go. I suppose I can't think of a fantastic place for Eldorath to go. Probably the second planet. It looks like Sam's Warlord is going to be dropped off at the second planet. Alright, and Eldorath has decided to play it safe. I'm sure he's probably going to try and trigger Taurus's ability to draw some additional cards, maybe gain some additional resources, and then deposit this Void Pirate to win future command there. Looks like Sam is going to win command at the first 2 planets, and Planet 4 is going to be 1 card, 1 resource for our Eldar player. So very formidable combat presence for our Tyranid player. I suppose the best thing he can do with Aatrox is just ping the Autarch for 1, and then the Autarch, unless it retreats, could potentially do area effect. Our Eldar player does have 1 resource to pay for that, or he could try and deal some damage, maybe kill off that Venom Thrope, but it doesn't look like he has any fantastic options. Looks like George is going to be using the Autarch's ability to actually grant it mobile, which I forgot that it could do. So it's going to be shifting away, I would imagine, to, yes, set up at our 3rd planet for a much more favorable combat during a future game round. So it looks like Sam, this time, is actually going to be winning the first planet, which is going to net him 1 red and 1 blue icon, which makes it all the closer for him toward winning the game, and it makes things all the less likely for our Eldar player. The new first planet is now going to be Taurus, which Sam managed to defend successfully. He's already set up reasonably well. The Tyranid Warrior is hardy, it hits hard. He's got those Hunter Gargoyles there as well. During the next round, they'll be totally ready to shift to whatever planet he might need them at. If he has, say, another copy of Scything Hormagaunts, if he can use Predation to spread infestation, and as ever, the first unit he plays at an infested planet, he can drop the cost by 2. So, currently Sam's sitting at 4 cards, and George is at 6. So it looks like George did decide to go with resources. And he has finished his turn. Looks like our combat phase is going to be ending, and that brings us to headquarters. Alright, so both players draw some cards, they gain some resources. Our initiative token passes, and our new 5th and final planet is Ossus 4. So it's the Steel Resources planet. Both of our players have an abundance of resources and an abundance of cards, so this could get pretty interesting indeed. Things are still very much the early game in regard to the number of icons players win. It looks like the game could be ending relatively quickly. We've got the planets falling where if our Tyranid player were to win, say, the next couple, he would be shy. Looks like our Tyranid player could win on planet 3 here, whereas if our Eldar player were to kind of get back in the game, be much more aggressive, it's looking like the same. We see a lurking Hormigaunt at the first planet, kind of a curious choice, just since there are already so many attacking units there, but Sam must really, really want to defend that planet, and we are starting to see a ton of cards and resources for both players. And currently waiting to see, it looks like a Void Pirate. I would assume that's going to go to planet 4 or 5, and George does decide to put it at planet 4. So, just in regard to potentially killing off some of these units, the Autarch is definitely a big threat for the Tyranid player. We see the Virulent Spore Sacks hit the table. Also sent to the first planet. That's a really convenient means of infesting a planet. Granted, it need not be exhausted in order to trigger its combat action, so if that's deployed alongside, if it moves to a planet alongside Old One-Eye in the future, not a big deal at all. Bealtan Guardians at the 5th planet makes a very, very strong command presence for our Eldar player. Unless Sam can answer some of this, it looks like Eldorath is going to just net a tremendous amount of income during the command phase. So it looks like our Tyranid player is definitely putting all of his eggs in one basket with the first planet aggression, and I'm kind of curious to see if our Tyranid has any answer whatsoever. We do see a Tyranid warrior, but it doesn't quite best the Void Pirate here. So I can only imagine that we're ultimately going to see Old One-Eye deployed to Planet 3, just to try and ensure that that George doesn't get to draw 2 cards and 1 resource. We see a Starbane's Council deployed to Planet 3, and it's looking like Eldorath is likely going to go there alongside Old One-Eye. So our Savage Warrior Prime might end up going to the 5th planet, might go to the 4th, just to try and kill off one of those units, but I would almost guarantee that we're going to see both Warlords contesting Planet 3. Alright, so we see a promotion from Sam, which now means that both players are matched for command icons. At this point, Sam's down to 1 resource, 2 cards, so okay, we see a Bloodied Reavers at Planet 2, which is interesting. This might be a setup for a future combat, and that gives Eldorath a very strong presence at Eloith, Planet 2, to be sure. And combat is going to be very interesting this round. That Starbane's Council is almost assuredly going to be able to attack the Tyranid Warrior for 5 if Eldorath comes in and exhausts it, and we might end up seeing some work put in by Old One-Eye. No idea what exactly our players have in hand, but it looks like they've both passed, and we're going to be moving into command. So, if I were to assume, I can only imagine the Savage Warrior Prime will go to 4 or 5, and for 3, we'll probably end up seeing both Warlords. And at this point, I don't think things are necessarily looking great for our Tyranid player, unless he's got some really nasty surprises here. But let's see. So looks like both players have selected their destinations. Okay, so our Tyranid Warlord is going to go to Planet 2. So the volatile Pyrovore arrives exhausted, but Autarch Salakia could potentially gain Armorbane. We do see Eldorath show up at Karnath, so it looks like that poor Tyranid warrior is going to be quite likely absolutely blown apart. Looks like the Tyranid is going to win command at Planet 1, and then it's just absolutely brutal in our Eldar player winning at 4 and 3 and 5, and with 2 Void Pirates, so that is just an enormous influx of cards, an enormous gain in resources, and things are not looking fantastic at this point for Old One-Eye, despite this just tremendous first planet presence. Note that typically you do command struggles one at a time, but of course in Octagon that's not so much possible. At our first planet, it looks like Sam vastly outnumbers our Eldar player, so he's not actually going to be able to trigger that battle ability. We do end up seeing a predation, so the infestation is going to spread to our second planet so that we can have our hunter gargoyles kind of opportunistically swoop in, which could be absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately it looks like George triggers a nullify, and that is really going to potentially hurt our Tyranid player. Those gargoyles can no longer swoop in to attack, and they'd have been able to deal enough damage to kill the bloodied reavers, so that can definitely hurt Sam here. He's looking to potentially lose quite a few units. The nice thing about the Pyrovore here is that if it is destroyed, when it is destroyed, it's likely going to take either of these units with it, unless we start seeing a lot of shield cards from our 8-card holding Eldar player. First planet, of course, goes to Sam, and this is just a tremendous number of units here returned to his HQ. It's going to be a big mycetic spore drop on the next planet, to be sure. Alright, so after a little brief break, it looks like we're both back. We've got our players cranking on some tunes. Old One-Eye is going to be launching a launching an attack at the Bloodied Reavers, so he's swinging for 2 versus that 2 HP unit. It seems like it would be in our Eldar players' best interests to shield, considering they've got 4 attack, and we do see the loss, the discard of a Foresight. Oh, and another No Mercy from our Tyranid player, which is absolutely devastating. So I'm sure that George was counting on that 4 attack unit not being destroyed. But surprise, it's gone, and all of a sudden things are looking much, much better for our Tyranid. Of course, Autarch Salakia remains. There's plenty of resources in our Eldar player's possession to give it Armor Bane, and he does opt to give it Armor Bane. So we'll have to see if he takes a swing at Old One-Eye, or if he just outright kills the Pyrovore, and then potentially retreats after shielding, I presume, against that damage. But we will have to see. It looks like no actions from Sam, and looks like the Autarch opts to take a swing. So as soon as Old One-Eye readies, he'll shave off 2 points of damage. It's kind of an interesting choice. Maybe our Eldar player just has a tremendous number of shield cards in hand, but still it looks like that's going to be really, really a nasty effect. We'll see if we end up seeing a retreat. Of course, Sam is opting to stay. He's got, a pretty foreboding presence. He could definitely stand to benefit from that technology icon, putting him ever so closer to victory. And if he were to win this planet and the next planet the subsequent turn, that would seal him the game. It looks like George is trying to decide, does he want to stay, does he not? That Tyranid warrior is definitely going to be obliterated. Karnath could trigger a random discard, it could trigger a resource steal. Both of those are decent options. I can only imagine he'll probably go with a random discard. And it looks like George is deciding to stay. So the Autarch still has Armor Bane, and initiative is in Sam's hands. So it looks like he's going to go heavy with shield cards, but he's got... Okay, so we see an Archon's Terror. Those last couple resources are going to send the volatile Pyrovore packing, and now it makes much more sense. I seem to have forgotten about that Dark Eldar staple. The Bloodied Reavers existing should have been a dead giveaway. Looks like Old One-Eye retreats. He's not going to choose to risk it. If Sam wins the next planet, he can still take home the game. All he needs is one additional red icon, and our Eldar player still needs quite a bit, so it looks like the game is actually going to come down to this next turn at Karnath. Whichever player wins that will end up winning, whether it's red icons for Sam or blue for George. Looks like George is going to pick one card from the top three, put the other two at the bottom of his deck, and of course he's currently sitting at 7 cards in hand versus our Tyranid player's 3. There's now going to be a battle at Karnath. So let's see how this breaks down. Battle initiative is going to be in the hands of the Eldar player. Sam has no actions whatsoever, so this is going to be a 5-attack Starbane's Council swinging at the Tyranid warrior. And it looks like it is outright destroyed. He could have spent a 2 shield icon card like a heavy venom cannon to save it if he had one, but it looks like he's opting to let it and its associated promotion get destroyed. So our new first planet is going to be pretty... Oops. And I'm sorry, it seems like I made a mistake. Our player's taking a little bit of a break through my concentration, so it's not so much going to be this next turn that decides the game, but it's going to be the turn after next. So my sincerest apologies. How embarrassing. This giant Tyranid swarm was actually present at the first planet, so it looks like we're going to have another couple rounds to this game. The Savage Warrior Prime. So it looks like George ultimately decided to trigger Karnath, and of course he used Barless to discard a card at random. Sam lost a copy of Dark Cunning, which is absolutely fantastic, would have been an additional attack. It looks like the Savage Warrior Prime was not able to destroy that Void Pirate. And Sam, of course, was able to trigger Barless himself with that Savage Warrior Prime. Our Eldar player lost a copy of the Slith Mercenaries. So we've got a new round starting up. The headquarters phase is complete. Sam has got 7 resources now and 4 cards versus our Eldar player with 4 resources and 8 cards. The initiative is in the hands of the Eldar player. He's got an absolutely fantastic command presence, much as he did the previous turn, and it's all going to come down to the turn after next. No Warlord is anywhere near being bloodied at this point. Alright, so it looks like our Eldar player drops, I believe, his 3rd Void Pirate into play at our new Planet 3, which is going to net him, once again, a tremendous influx of cards, and this is just an absolutely absurd number of units in Sam's HQ here. So I can only imagine that he's going to try and drop these off at Planet 2, just to make sure that he's set up favorably to potentially win the game. Things are looking a little dangerous for our Eldar player, most definitely. There's no infestation token, but the virulent spore sacs are very capable of doing that. We see a Toxic Venomthrope surpassing the command of the Void Pirate here, which could potentially deny our Eldar player a grand total of 3 cards and net 2 cards for Sam, so that's a pretty stellar move. It's currently looking to be George's deploy. For this first planet, the Autarch is awfully strong, but we'll have to see if it ends up taking it by itself, and it's not necessarily the most pivotal planets. An Incubus Warrior at Planet 3 allows our Eldar player the advantage once again, so he's got an adequate number of command icons to win a grand total of 3 cards, which it looks like he's probably going to need as many shields as possible, and resources are becoming very thin and scarce indeed for our Eldar player, whereas Sam has still got 5, and the deploy phase is young. So I believe we're currently waiting on Sam to figure out what exactly he's going to do. And another volatile Pyrovore. This is definitely one of the nastiest Tyranid cards, and showing up at that first planet is going to be absurd. So I can only imagine we'll see Old One-Eye dropped off at the second planet, volatile Pyrovore is going to be sitting at the first, probably supplemented alongside a Savage Warrior Prime, so that even if the Pyrovore is destroyed, the Autarch is likely to die, and that'll prevent our Eldar player from triggering that battle ability, but we'll have to see how it goes. And a regeneration on the volatile Pyrovore brings it to 5 hit points, 3 attack. It can peel off damage, so maybe at this point he doesn't even need to send the Savage Warrior Prime there. Things are looking up for the Tyranid player. Both warlords are going to pick where to go. It would certainly make sense for Eldorath to go to maybe Planet 1 to tap out that Pyrovore. It would also maybe make sense to show up at Planet 3 to maybe knock out the Venomthrope, but it's looking like he doesn't have any amazing options. He could try and force the Tyranid player to discard another card at random. He could steal a resource. Granted, at the moment, Eldorath doesn't have enough to play an Archon's Terror, something like that. We do see our Warlord, of course, go to Planet 2, and Eldorath goes to Planet 1. So that is going to be a hell of a lot of units dropped off at our first planet here. And the Synapse unit, I'll be curious to see where that goes. Possibly our final planet, just to make sure. Oh no, okay, it is our first planet, which is going to be a fantastic answer to Eldorath. So even though our Eldar player does have battle initiative, that's a lot of attack power he's staring down, and things are looking not so great for George. So it's kind of heartening to see our Tyranids doing reasonably well. But let's see how things break down. For our command phase, it looks like Sam is going to be definitely winning at the second planet. First planet goes to Eldar. Third and fourth are also going to Eldar. Looks like Sam made a small error with accidentally drawing a card due to the toxic Venomthropes. And, of course, since both of our players are not on Skype, and it's difficult to just chat, looks like George was going to trigger some sort of action. Presumably a foresight, or a superiority. So, of course, when Eldorath comes in, that volatile Pyrovore is going to be exhausted, and we do see a foresight from Eldorath. So he's actually going to be shifting to the second planet, and that's going to allow him an opportunity to exhaust a non-warlord. Looks like our players are making some room for the first planet and second, just because things are awfully messy here. So we do see a ton of cards and resources influxing for our Eldar player, and really a whole lot of nothing for the Tyranids. So this is pretty enormous potentially. It's going to be, 3 cards, an additional card and resource, an additional 3 cards and 2 resources. So grand total of 8 cards and 3 resources for George, which is just absolutely huge. Tyranid player Sam currently sitting at 1 card, 1 resource versus 3 resources, 13 cards, which is absolutely huge. So even though he's set up very nicely for this next turn, who knows what Eldorath has sitting in his hand. It looks like he's only got 20 cards remaining in his deck, so throughout the course of this game he's drawn 11 more cards than Sam has. So looks like Autarch Salakia gains mobile, and unfortunately that's going to mean he cannot also gain area effect, which would be fantastic during this fight in particular. So I suppose this one is still in the air. I'll be curious to see how things ultimately go. The Savage Warrior Prime is going to attack our Void Pirate at the first planet before it gets an opportunity to retreat. And I can only imagine that Eldorath will let it die. And the Void Pirate is indeed destroyed. So it looks like the first battle is going to be won, so Sam is going to get his pick of the top 3 cards of his deck, and then put the remaining 2 at the bottom. Things are going to be much more curious at the second planet. The victor is almost assuredly going to do the random discard. It's looking like Sam might have something like a Ferocious Strength in his hand, which he could use for 1 resource. That could be absolutely huge, considering Old One-Eye is almost undoubtedly going to be taking quite a bit of damage. That's, yeah, awfully brutal here. The Autarch is going to be able to swing for, say, 3. Old One-Eye's, if he's not going to be bloodied outright, it looks like Starbane's Council could easily do that, or in any case, just obliterate one of these little Tyranid units here. Savage Warrior Prime and that volatile Pyrovore, of course, return to the HQ as Sam captures the first planet. And let's see how things break down here. So initiative during combat is going to be in the hands of our Eldar player. I can only imagine he'll probably attack with his Void Pirate first to get that out of the way. And our Tyranid player is going to be kind of facing an uphill battle here. So once again, George sitting at 2 resources, grand total of 13 cards. He may have Archon's Terror, he may have any number of other effects. Sam, with just that 1 mere resource, there's not too much that can come out of him in regard to surprises. We've seen 1 Dark Cunning discarded, and apart from that, apart from Ferocious Strength, there's not too many devious Tyranid tricks we could expect. So whether or not Old One-Eye retreats, or whether he dares to attack, it's looking like this big Tyranid standing army is going to take quite a bit of damage. The virulent Spore Sacks do sacrifice themselves, so they're going to do a global 1 damage to all the enemy forces, and the Void Pirate is actually destroyed, so I'll be curious to see if maybe the Autarch attacks first, or Eldorath attacks first. And he doesn't shield against any of this damage, actually. So once again, quite curious as to how this will pan out. This volatile Pyrovore is a fascinating creature in that it's almost guaranteed to destroy whatever it is that ultimately kills it, and it's dealing a ton of damage in the meantime. If Old One-Eye does retreat, these lurking Hormagaunts can still assign quite a bit of damage to him, although it's relatively simple, it looks like, for our Eldar player to outpace that damage. Okay, so it's looking like the Autarch destroys... Okay, so Autarch destroys the Pyrovore, and ultimately a mobility gets discarded so that the Autarch takes no damage in response to it leaving play. Old One-Eye does retreat to prevent himself from taking 5 attack damage from that Starbane's Council, and things are starting to look kind of tragic for our Tyranid army here. The Council attacks for a grand total of 5 versus the 4 HP Tyranid Warrior, and that's yet another casualty of Sam's. He's only got 2 army units remaining, and even though they're not terribly powerful, yeah, Eldorath can pick off those Hunter Gargoyles, and this is just a brutal sweep from our Eldar player. So, nearing the end of the combat round, all of our units ready, and it looks like Sam does force a retreat. So at the present moment, we've got this new first planet for our following turn, and yeah, if that's won, it's looking like that'll be putting George at 2 blue, 2 red, and he's not actually going to be able to win until our very last planet. So this is looking to be a quite long game indeed. If our Tyranid player ends up winning either this planet's, basically our Tyranid player can either win our new first planet or our 5th planet, and at this point it might be safer for him to try and win at the final. But we're starting to see a huge discrepancy here between the Eldar player having 6 resources compared to Sam's 5, and then 14 cards versus his 4. It's starting to be pretty brutal. Looks like, once again, in the interest of saving room, our players are adjusting the board, so Sam could certainly set himself up to be kind of favorably positioned at our very last planet, so that he might be able to pull this out, but we'll have to see. Our new deploy phase is ongoing. We see a Spore Chimney. It's going to allow him to infest planets at will, so he could opportunistically swing in additional Hunter Gargoyles. For something like a Toxic Venomthrope, he'd be able to generate additional cards and resources. If he happens to have a Shrieking Harpy, which he no longer has resources to pay for, he could potentially exhaust the entire Eldar army, but at this point I'm not sure how much benefit exactly he might see from this one, and especially considering it's not going to be able to do anything until the headquarters phase. So we're currently waiting on an action from George. He's got 6 resources at the moment, and he plays another copy out of Starbane's Council at our 2nd planet, so it looks like he's trying to cover all of his bases here. Kind of an interesting choice. I suppose he assumes a combat's going to be happening there. At our 1st planet, we see another virulent Spore Sacs, which is going to be infesting. It's going to be dealing out damage, so either putting on all the more pressure to these 2 expensive, powerful combat units, or in any case, just, wasting an opponent's shield cards. We end up seeing a Warlock Destructor to the 1st planet as well, so that's going to be just an incredibly daunting combat presence. That's kind of an interesting choice, just because it seems like things are already fairly well established there, but this is just such an enormous Tyranid army. Looks like both players have passed. I can only imagine that Sam is going to be doing something like sending Old One-Eye to our very final planet, maybe the Savage Warrior Prime to Planet 4, although the Starbane's Council is a tremendous deterrent, so this might be an opportunity for Eldorath to snipe our Synapse units. Alright, so at this point, both players have chosen their destinations. It's looking like there's quite a few traps set up for our Tyranid. I can only imagine that he'll be sending Old One-Eye to, yes, the 3rd planet to deposit that enormous army there, and curiously, Eldorath also goes there. So I'll be curious to see what happens with that. The Savage Warrior Prime is looking like, unless it can retreat immediately, it's gonna just get brutally slaughtered. Oh, and that is really gonna hurt, so even though Sam is gonna have combat initiative there, the first attack is gonna be just really painful indeed. That Savage Warrior Prime is looking to just get butchered, so this might be the end of it. And that's going to allow Barlas to trigger. But in any case, doing command looks like it's yet another sweep for George. He's going to gain all the more cards and resources, and this is just really going to hurt our Tyranid player. So he might be able to eke out a victory just based on this big standing force at the final planet, but I don't know at this point. The Eldar player is just accumulating such a huge army that even if they're all showing up exhausted, that may not necessarily be enough. So grand total of 4 cards, 3 resources for George, and that's really painful. 4 resources, 16 cards for the Eldar player versus 1 resource and 2 cards for Old One-Eye. And it looks like we're going to be moving on to combat. Nothing but these virulent spore sacs sitting here. I'm sure that they're going to be blown up to deal out a little bit of area effect style damage. And this is going to allow probably 2 triggers during this round of Barless, which is going to just empty Sam's hand. So things are looking very grim indeed. Looks like Sam is kind of regretting where he ultimately sent his Savage Warrior Prime, and he's kind of lamenting the fact that I'm sure we've all realized by now he's going to get murdered at planet number 2. But we've still yet to have our planet 1 resolve. We're waiting on seeing if there's going to be any kind of opportunistic movement for our autarch here. So certainly a very expensive unit, but given just how much command George has had over the course of the game, it's certainly put in quite a bit of work doing Armor Bane, doing mobile, and both players are kind of figuring out what to do. It looks like George is going to spend a resource on mobile, so he's almost assuredly not going to waste that, and he's going to shift the autarch from planet 1 to planet 2. It's very tricky not being involved in a Skype conversation here. I feel like I'm missing out on a lot. But the autarch does shift positions. Looks like our players are adjusting the planets to make everything a little bit easier to keep track of. Things are looking very, very bad indeed for the Savage Warrior Prime. And it looks like the virulent spore sacs are indeed going to explode, conferring some damage. And George just takes it. So none of his 16 cards expend his shields. At this point, he's probably feeling reasonably confident. He's going to be able to trigger any battle ability he would like. He can either completely starve Sam of resources or force a random discard. I can only imagine he's going to... I suppose he is going to take a resource. So starve the Tyranid player as best he can. It's looking like Sam is only going to have the 4 resources he gains from this last HQ phase. We are, of course, going to be seeing a battle at Planet 2 as well. The Savage Warrior Prime takes a swing at Starbane's Council, probably the last thing it's ever going to do. And let's see if he ends up taking the damage or shielding. He's certainly got a glut of cards filling his hand. Okay, so he does end up taking both points of damage, and it's all going to come down to this last planet. I can only imagine that the Eldar players accumulated sufficient mass at this point, but we will see. And the Savage Warrior Prime is killed outright. There's no fall back. Sam didn't have a resource to pay for that, so even if he had it in hand, picking to steal that resource gave him a great opportunity to ensure that that Synapse unit was dead. The Toxic Venomthrope as well is destroyed. Barless is going to trigger, and Sam is going to be down to a grand total of 1 card, 0 resources, and things are looking bleak. We do still have a battle at the final planet, our 3rd planet, Osis 4, and there's actually quite a few combatants here. So Old One Eye is the only standing Tyranid. We've got the Bealtan Guardians, which can swing for 1. Eldorath himself can swing for 1. Looks like our players took a brief pause to consult the rules reference guide, so I got to indulge in some chatting. And we're still waiting on a battle at the final planet, Osis 4. Sam indicates he is ready. George indicates he is ready. Old One Eye is going to be taking a swing and potentially destroying the Bealtan Guardians, which he does allow to go through. Now, Eldorath, I can only imagine, is going to be retreating at the end of the round, but he could take a swing at maybe... I suppose the Venomthrope would be the most sensical thing. The Pyrovore could just exhaust. Well, it's probably going to be the Pyrovore to take a point of damage, seeing as how regeneration is not ready. and that'll make it all the more likely to die during the following turn. Alright, so Eldorath is actually going to be taking a swing at the Toxic Venomthrope here. And it ends up taking 1 point of damage, and then that'll bring us to the end of the combat round. All of our units are going to ready, and I could only imagine that Eldorath is going to get the hell out of there since he's staring down a large amount of attack, and he does end up leaving. So Sam is going to be able to steal 1 resource. Not too bad at all. Old One-Eye, of course, returns to HQ. During HQ, Spore Chimney activates on that last planet, so it does gain an infestation token. That could allow the Toxic Venomthrope to, give Sam a resource, give him a card. That could be fantastic, and getting like a Dark Cunning, Ferocious Strength might end up playing a prominent role at the end of this game. We haven't really seen too many signature cards out of our Tyranid, so kind of remains to be seen. Sam now has 5 resources, 3 cards going into this upcoming round versus the Eldar's 7 resources, 18 cards in total. Eldorath only has 12 cards remaining in his deck, and Sam has got 26. So at the moment, just a huge discrepancy here. And it looks like our players are taking a moment to kind of think things out. Our first planet is Barless. We've got a big Eldar standing force here, but seeing as how it's only got a strong point icon, it's not actually going to be a victory condition for either player until our second planet here. The HQ has got a number of powerful Eldar units in it, so this might be an opportunity for our Eldar player to just completely seal the deal and obliterate our Tyranid player. Looks like George opts to keep his Warlock Destructor in play, and I'll be curious to see how many army units he ends up putting out onto the table. I think we've just seen 2 of the Starbane's councils, so we might have some more of those. This is still our second copy of Autarch's Salakia we've seen, and absolutely no idea what's in Sam's hand. It's unlikely to be another Volatile Pyrovore, although that would be absolutely fantastic during this final couple of rounds. Looks like Digestion Pool is going to allow a Shrieking Harpy to interplay, and that means that during the next round, Sam is going to have initiative with a Shrieking Harpy at an infested planet. So even though this game is looking very, very grim for him indeed, he might be able to pull it out of his ass just by being able to tap out the entire standing opposing army. Definitely Eldorath is going to be exhausting that, but if Sam can manage to do something like a Dark Cunning, that could make absolutely all the difference. We end up seeing another Starbane's Council, and now things just got extraordinarily interesting. So it's looking like Sam has passed, and now our Eldar player is going to have free reign with 2 resources, 16 cards. Clearly he's got an enormous standing army, but it's all going to come down as to whether or not Eldorath is going to be able to deal with the Shrieking Harpy here. A Warlock Destructor goes to the last planet. This could be an interesting opportunity for Eldorath to try and kill off the Harpy, just because even if both Warlords go to our second planet, which I can only assume is going to be the case, Eldorath can tap out the Harpy, and then potentially try and kill it off prior to it being able to just completely wreck Sam's forces. So things are very fascinating indeed at the moment. Looks like George is indeed done, and now we're going to be progressing to the command phase. So it's all but certain that command is going to be won at the first planet for our Eldar, command at the second for Eldar, and I can only imagine both players are going to be going to planet number 2. So this is going to be very interesting. And let's see what they've selected. So, Planet 2 for our Tyranid, Planet 2 for our Eldar player. There's going to be quite a bit of stuff following Eldorath, and not so much for Old One-Eye. Of course, Eldorath chooses to very wisely kneel the Shrieking Harpy, and the Starbane's Council and Warlock Destructor arrive exhausted, but that is going to be a lot of incoming damage to the Harpy, with not a lot of cards for Sam to expend his shields. So even though it's 5 HP with flying, it's gonna have to deal with a lot of incoming damage. The Destructor still swings for 2. Starbane's Council, each copy still swings for 3. So it's looking like it might be a complete tragedy, and that the Harpy is going to be destroyed before it gets its chance. But kind of remains to be seen still. Of course, Eldorath nets 3 cards, 1 resources. Sam ends up netting 2 resources, so if he's got that Dark Cunning, that could make a huge difference for him. It would only cost him a net of 1 resource, since it's at an infested planet. Autarch Salakia gains Mobile. I keep forgetting about that ability in our new The Great Devourer non-Tyranid unit here, and it's going to be shifting over to Planet 2. So, no resources whatsoever for our Eldar player, but he does have 18 cards worth of potential shields. He's only got 9 cards remaining in his deck, and we do see a Dark Cunning to ready the Shrieking Harpy. So very important to note is that Eldar does have initiative, but now Sam has got this Shrieking Harpy to, as soon as it's declared an attacker, exhaust each and every enemy non-elite army and token units. And it looks like George is indicating he feels rather boned at the moment, but we'll see how things ultimately go. Sam indicates he is ready. The battle at the first planet is going to be very simple indeed, so Sam is going to lose his last card in hand as soon as Barless triggers, but that's an awful lot of combat units that are going to get knocked out by the Harpy. Old One-Eye is swinging reasonably hard himself, so it's all going to come down to, does Eldorath have enough damage to kill off the Harpy? Is it going to make enough of a difference? This is just a fascinating game so far. It, keeps going kind of back and forth. First planet is captured by the Eldar player, so it's all going to come down to planet number 7. Of course, all of these standing units here are going to be returned to Eldorath's HQ. And now, battle is going to begin at our second planet. So Sam is going to be attacking. Oh, it looks like Sam is saying he forgot to trigger his Toxic Venomthrope. So he's going to gain himself an additional card. George is being a courteous player here. I'm sure that the pressure is on, what with both of our players knowing that they're being recorded full well, so yeah, okay, it looks like Sam drew his card out of his discard and redid that random discard. So very gentlemanly move for both players. And that Awakening Cavern is gone. Maybe Sam has a shield. If this is something like a Heavy Venom Cannon, that could be absolutely clutch in preserving the life of the Shrieking Harpy here. So combat is going to begin. Eldar has initiative. Autarch Salakia is going to swing with 3 non-armor bane at the Shrieking Harpy. And we do see a predation, so it's only going to be a grand total of 1 damage that the Harpy takes. And now, for the very first time, I get to witness a Shrieking Harpy do what it does best. And it's Sam's turn to attack. So Sam, of course, attacks with the Shrieking Harpy, directed at what? Of course, all the opposing Eldar army and token units that are not elite are immediately exhausted. He's going to take a swing at the Starbane's Council, which is already wounded, and it is going to score a kill. The only standing non-Tyranid here is Eldorath. And what is Eldorath going to take a swing at? It would make sense to take a pot shot at the Harpy, but then he sets himself up to take a ton of incoming damage. Okay, Eldorath does retreat. And now our Tyranid player is going to get 3 units worth of attacks in. Let's see if the Pyrovore is probably going to try and pick off, I suppose, the Warlock Destructor. Looks like George maybe regrets his action here. He's saying he had a Nullify in hand for the Dark Cunning. And that could very well have been a game-costing mistake there, so I can only assume it was because the pressure was on in this video. I suppose if I were Sam, I'd have maybe considered attacking the Starbane's Council, but of course he's a much more seasoned player than I. Volatile Pyrovore takes a swing at the Warlock Destructor, and we do see a 2-shield card. I suppose the thoughts there were that I suppose all of these units are equivalently costed. They're all going to get in 1 attack before the Harpy does, so he'd have never had a chance to attack with a bolstered Starbane's Council. The Lurking Hormigaunt is going to be taking a swing at Autarch Salakia, and he actually chooses to allow the damage through. Old One-Eye is also swinging at the Warlock Destructor. I think we've seen at least 2 Empowers used as shields, but it's full well possible that George might have an additional one based on his 17 cards in hand. And let's see if Old One-Eye ends up killing the Destructor. Okay, we see the 3rd copy of Empower saving its life. Of course, the Toxic Venom Thrope swings, does nothing. That brings us to the end of the combat round. All of our units are readied, and there's a big-ass standing Tyranid army here. All of a sudden, things are looking much, much, much better for our Tyranid player. What is Eldorath going to do? Of course, Sam indicates he's going to stay. There's not really much to be gained if we see Eldorath, or if we see the remaining Eldar forces retreat, but they do. I suppose they're trying to avoid just being outright destroyed by our Harpy here. So the Destructor remains, and it's going to take a pot shot here at the Harpy. So it looks like Sam takes that couple points of damage. Granted, he's going to have initiative next round, but Eldorath is going to be returning to the planet to exhaust it. So it's looking like the Harpy may have done all that it needed to do, even in just triggering its ability once, but the Pyrovore manages to kill off that 1 remaining Eldar unit. And even though we just see a tremendous number of cards in George's hand, he's still not gonna have the income required to really fill the board with a big standing army. So it's still all gonna be pretty close when it comes down to it. But we'll see how this ultimately pans out. The HQ is just going to be completely full for Eldorath, and this is going to bring us to the deploy phase. Sam manages to trigger that battle ability to... I don't think Eldar actually had any resources to steal, but now Sam's got his final 2 cards. He's got 6 resources. If he drew another Shrieking Harpy, that would be absolutely fantastic. Looks like he was not so fortunate. Oh, but he pulls a regeneration for the Harpy, so he can pull damage off of it. It gains additional hit points. All of a sudden, things are looking like that might do a hell of a lot of good for him after all, even if Eldorath can initially exhaust it. It's possible that Sam has 1 remaining Dark Cunning. If it's in his hand, that would be absolutely clutch. He could also have pulled another copy of Shrieking Harpy, and considering his digestion pool here, he could put that into play. This is a hell of a lot of stuff that George has, but if he can just exhaust all of it with but a single swing, that's really, you know, what else can you say? I suppose we're currently waiting on George to take some sort of action. Maybe he's feeling some sort of despair as the the overwhelming shadow in the warp from the Tyranid army is just starting to overcome the psychic might of Eldorath, but, you know, this could still go to either player. It's looking like he is going to pay to keep his Warlock Destructor in play, of course. Alright, it looks like George did actually decide to allow the Warlock Destructor to die, which means he must really need all of those different resources. So he's got 4. We could expect something along the lines of an Archon's Terror or 2, and that could prove to be extraordinarily nasty. So he could eject a unit to the HQ. Of course, for command, there's only the one option for both players, so Sam is going to ultimately win command here, it looks like, and just a giant exhausted army, a lot of ready Tyranids, and things are going to be looking pretty grim here, but a lot of remaining resources, of course, for Eldorath. So it looks like combat is going to be beginning very shortly. And the Harpy is going to be knelt. Or, sorry, it looks like Sam triggered regeneration on the Harpy. And Eldorath is picking to exhaust the volatile Pyrovore, just because it's a lot of attack strength that can go out. And even though the Harpy is going to be able to attack, it's only swinging for 2 relative to that 3. And let's see how this all breaks down. The initiative token is in Sam's hands, so he is going to get 1 opportunity to attack before Eldorath is going to have an ability to exhaust. I can only imagine that he'll remain at the planet, just because at this point, if he does end up bloodied, it's not going to make really any difference at all. And that Archon's Terror does show up. Of course, it triggers to select that to select the Shrieking Harpy, so I suppose he didn't have the resources for it before, or simply did not have it in hand. It's kind of a shame that it can affect elites so easily. That's, 2 cards and 7 resources just completely wiped off the face of the battlefield. It's as good as dead at this point, because there's no Tyranid means of returning it to that planet. The Lurking Hormigaunt is going to take a swing, kill that Starbane's Council. So now there's really just 3 combat units remaining for the Dark Eldar player. We've got that Starbane's Council, which is going to be swinging for 5, and all of a sudden Gift of Isha enters play. So things are now kind of looking really bad for Sam. Starbane's Council returns to play. It attacks the Pyrovore for a grand total of 5. Sam does have a shield card to keep it alive. And he does have that regeneration to trigger to peel off a couple points of damage, but it's still enormously wounded. So he peels off those couple points of damage, and now it's going to be up to Old One-Eye and Eldorath left to attack. Old One-Eye, I presume, will be attacking maybe the Incubus Warrior to try and kill that, but 17 cards in hand for Eldorath is just so brutal, and the Starbane's Council is going to ultimately be selected as the target, and we see an Empower discarded, so another 2 shield card. So it takes no damage whatsoever. The only thing left is the Venomthrope and Eldorath. Eldorath takes another swing at the Pyrovore. Sam is basically forced to take it, and now it's all but guaranteed that he's going to lose his Pyrovore. And things are looking very, very bleak. So it's all come down to the wire here. And at this point, actually, Sam cannot win on this planet. So it's kind of the Eldar player's game at this point. The Pyrovore takes a swing at Starbane's Council. And let's see what shield card. Yeah, we see a Gift of Isha. So that's going to be just a single point of damage conferred to the Council. And now that, 3 swing attacker is going to be still very well alive. The Incubus Warrior is going to take the swing. The Pyrovore is going to be killed, and it'll of course trigger, and the damage goes through, both units die, and these two Starbane's councils still remain. Lurking Hormigaunt, I assume, yes, attacks the wounded Starbane's council, and does he shield that? Okay, so he allows it to go through, and the Starbane's council is killed. Our Eldar player is now completely out of resources, but he's still got plenty of armed forces left. Eldorath takes a swing at Old One-Eye. Kind of curious choice, but it doesn't really matter too much, seeing as how the Lurking Hormigaunt can just reassign that damage anyway. But Old One-Eye's definitely going to take that point of damage. The Toxic Venom Throat takes a swing at it doesn't matter what, because it's got 0 attack. The Rogue Trader swings, and now it's going to be Old One-Eye's turn. And he, of course, attacks the Starbane's Council. And we see a Nullify discarded as a shield. So only a single point of damage, and now the Starbane's Council, will it destroy our Lurking Hormigaunt? Okay, it takes a swing at Old One-Eye. And that is actually going to bloody him outright. I suppose I had spaced that he actually has 6 hit points instead of 7. I was thinking of his signature army unit. Looks like Void Pirate. Everything else readies. And that's going to bring us to this very final round of combat. The initiative is still in the hands of the Tyranid player, but things are looking very, very, very bleak. The Lurking Hormigaunt is going to be swinging at the Council. So 14 cards remaining in our Eldar player's hand. Although things are looking very, very grim. Interestingly, the Starbane's Council is destroyed, but Eldorath takes one final swing, and Old One-Eye takes that point of damage for the Lurking Hormigaunt. So this is absolutely coming down to the wire here. So Lurking Hormigaunt takes a swing. It is shielded with the third and final copy of Nullify, but Eldorath is still going to take a couple points of damage. I suppose just doing the math mentally, let's say if he's got 1 shield cards remaining, it's going to be 2 points each and every time, so 5, and then 2 more swings. This could easily end up going to Sam, this very final planet here. The Lurking Hormigaunt takes a swing at Eldorath, and he does not have any shields whatsoever. And of course, Old One-Eye absorbs that damage. So the Lurking Hormigaunt swings, and he's going to end up bloodying Eldorath. Wow. So the Lurking Hormigaunt remaining, just absolutely doing work here, and all that remain are a Rogue Trader and Void Pirate for the Eldar. And, yeah. Just to verify that the players are calling the game. It looks like Sam is ultimately the victor, so it looks like it just absolutely came down to the wire, but it looks like we see a forfeit from George, so just absolutely fascinating. The Lurking Hormigaunt here able to just reassign so much damage. It looks like we see our Eldar player's hand, just a ton of army units, extremely strong in command, but absolutely devoid of shields and with only 7 cards remaining in his hand. So, wow, absolutely stellar. So, just absolutely crazy. So, I suppose that's our game. Sam has captured the final planet, and they've called it at that. So, Thank you very much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come. Well, with our match having drawn to a close, I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you once again for watching, and I very much hope you enjoyed my first live commentated match. Please leave a comment letting me know not just what you thought of this match, but also my commentary style specifically. Interaction with viewers like you continues to be the highlight of my creating content for this channel, and feedback is always appreciated. So, with that said, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. If you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more eyes there are on these videos, the more potential new players we might draw to this game, and as a result serve only to ever expand our Conquest community. Please feel free to contact me directly or keep in touch through social media if you'd like, but in any case, thank you very much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.